Baruchim Aboim B'Shem Hashem. B'Shem Yirgin Shir. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Mitzlita on Sheres HaShchiches Issur Bosis B'Shabbos V'Yontif. Contemporary Shabbos Bosis issues. Tazvi Yitzchus is sponsoring a shir. Call Yirgin Shir at 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Harav Smith.
Someone asked me recently, you got a pretty new refrigerator freezer that is, and the freezer, unlike the typical one that has a chest for freezer and a refrigerator, the whole freezer, you pull it out. It's a drawer on the bottom of the refrigerator, and you pull out the whole drawer. And he notices that very often he's moving muktza. He's moving raw meat, or the hafrashas challah that people wait to burn until Erev Pesach. And he's constantly moving the muktza. Is there any problem with that? Then we had another problem, another question I should say, where someone, like many people have this in the kitchen, they don't have a garbage can in the corner. They have a drawer. They open the drawer and they put the garbage in. So every time they're opening the garbage, they're moving muktza. Now in a regular garbage can, you could keep the garbage as it is without moving it, so touching muktza is not a problem. But here he's moving the garbage back and forth countless times over Shabbos. So this led us to the beautiful sugya of Bosis on Shabbos, and I must be magdim. The Taisus Shabbos, one of the early Achrayim, Reishai and Tes Siv Zayin says, and I quote, Bosis l'davar asa, the sugya of Bosis, hu echad mi ikrei dinei Shabbos. It's one of the ikrim of Shabbos. Uman de lo yada, if you don't know that sugya, lo yada, immediately the Shabbos of Eloi Klub. If you don't know that, you don't know anything. So we don't want to be part of that club. So I'd like to learn one part of the sugya of Bosis, certainly a very important part, and as we'll see, I must mention that Hilchas Bosis Be'ikah is negayah to Yom Tov al Shabbos, because muktza is also on Yom Tov like Shabbos. The truth is, some of the main muktzas are not negayah on Yom Tov, like moving a candle and raw meat, but Bosis on Yom Tov applies to Shabbos as well. So Bosis on Yom Tov applies as well like on Shabbos. So the truth is, the Yisoid is a Mishnah that we could learn and almost miss the point. But the Mishnah in Shabbos, Kuf Mem Beis Amud Beis, Ho'even al shal pi chavius. Now, of course, you're talking about an even that's muktza. Chavius was a barrel of wine that was obviously very important for Shabbos and it was very valuable. So the Mishnah says, what happens if you come to make Kiddush and there's a stone on the barrel? Zok the Mishnah, Mata al tzida, v'hinai fellas. Don't touch the stone because the stone is muktza. But lemaisa, you tilt the barrel and the stone goes flying off. And we would ask, Pshita, what's the chiddush? You're not moving the stone directly, it's indirectly. What's the chiddush? So the Gemara supplies us with the chiddush by adding to the Mishnah. Zok the Gemara, the same exact case where you have a stone on top of a barrel. If you put it there on Erev Shabbos to stay there for Shabbos, let's say you want to protect the barrel, but you put a stone knowingly onto the barrel on Erev Shabbos, and it was there the entire Bein Hashmashos, then not only you can't tilt the stone off because the barrel is muktza, but even if a guy took off the stone, the barrel remains muktza. Leishanu ala b'sheicheach. Avo maniach, zok the Gemara, Nasa Bosis L'davar ha'os. Here the Gemara is almost inadvertently telling us two chidushim in Bosis. Number one, when it qualifies to be a Bosis, then heta becomes issur. A barrel of wine becomes muktza. But more than that, even if you got the stone off beheta, the wind blew it off, or a guy took it off, there's no issur of taking off the stone. But since Bein Hashmashos came, the stone was on the chavius, it was a Bosis, so the barrel remains muktza the entire Shabbos. And that's incidentally why you can't shake off the stone by moving the barrel, because the barrel is also muktza. So here we have two chidushim in Bosis, that lemaisa, a heta, non-muktza becomes muktza. And that of course works with the side of migdis katsoy lebein hashmashos. If it was a Bosis bein hashmashos, it remains even though you shook it off. Now the big question, which is really the big answer to all of our shaylas, is why is this so? Why is a Bosis true? Why does a Bosis make het into issur? So the emphasis, of course, Chazal, Chas v'Shalom, we're not out to Mitzayir us. But the Yisoid, I think, which will give us information of the whole sugya, is this Yisoid. Bosis is a simple decision, and I'll explain you what I mean. You go into the store and you buy a computer desk. So the desk is very good to learn a Rashba also. Why did it all of a sudden become muktza? Teretz says you decided to designate this desk to be the base to the computer. So it was your decision to make it a bosis. Now Rashi in Daf Mem Zayin says the following: the kli nasa bosis le'even utfei l'loy ubatel toires kli dida. The yesod of bosis is if it becomes a tafel, it becomes subordinate, it becomes part of the muktza. And you see it clearly by a computer desk. It's a regular non-muktza desk, but if you designate it to be the base for the computer, it's part of the computer. In Parsh Kisisa, Esakiya Veskanoi says the Targum, Yas Besise, base, basis is very similar. So it's basically like Rashi's Loshin, and actually Rashi in the top Mem Zayin, it says it again, Shakli Tafala Shal Heves Ba'oida Boy. In other words, the Leichta is a base and is bottle to the fire. So in other words, the key word is, if it's a base, it's bottle and tafel to the muktza and takes on the identity of the muktza. I'm almost tempted to say that just like we find, you could take very good raisins and put it on the roof, because you want to, very good grapes, put it on the roof, you want to make it raisins. So the Gemara says that's called muktza. Why? Dachya biadaya. You took edible grapes and put it on the roof. Now, you knew it's going to spoil in the interim, and then becomes raisins, but at one point you were dachi biadayim. I was almost tempted to say that that's the way bases work. A bus or a base works. If you designated a desk for your computer, so you were dachi biadayim. And Re'ez Apella, the Trumas Hadeshet in Chelik Beis, Simon Kuf Tzad Gimel, he speaks about buses, and he says, because since you made it a base, it's like you're pushing it off. And I saw in the wonderful Sefer Kolam Bil Shabbos, he quotes the Pnei Yeshua and Daf Mem Dalet and Beis, that Taka says beferish that buses works because of Dachi B'yadayim, that loshon, and it's very mistaver. So in other words, let me put this very bluntly. It's not that Chazal was trying to make your life difficult, chas v'shalom. It was your decision, a conscious decision, to make this a base, so you were making it bottle and tafel. So those three words is the aside of today. It's your decision to make the base a tafel to the muktza. Now you'll see this even more pronounced, and shimus chinafshechem. The aside be'ikah is a mishnah, because let's go back a moment. The mishnah says shachach even al pi chavi is if you didn't put the stone there bekavana, but you left it there, you forgot. For example, there's a big stone in the way, and you want to get rid of it for Shabbos. Now, the stone is muktza on Shabbos, you have to move it Erev Shabbos. So you're carrying the stone, and you got a call from the kitchen, help, we need help with the cholent. So you just don't know what to do. So you put the stone down on top of the chavis. Okay, I'll take it off in a minute. You go into the kitchen, you get busy, totally forgot. You come to make kiddush, a big stone on the chavis. So if you remember the Gemara we just learned, then the chavis is muktza the entire Shabbos. Calling a guy to shake off the stone won't work. But it's not true. Because the Gemara says, maniach is basis. What does the Mishnah say? Shachach even al pi chavius, menaya esa even, and use the chavius. What's the chiluk? Shachach, maniach, what's the difference? Teretz is masik midrash. The aside of muktza is you consciously made it a tough. If you maniach, it was your decision, so live with it. It's dachya. If you forgot to take it off, if it was there by mistake, it wasn't your decision. There's no bottle, there's no dachia, and there's no tafel whatsoever. So this, what we said, is basically the aside, the chiluk of the word maniach versus shachach, and all of this is Shulchan Aruch Siman Shin Tes Sif Dalet. Now, this we understand another basic halacha, which again, not only is halacha l'maisa, but gives us a better appreciation of the actual yesod. A person comes to shul Shabbos morning, and to his great dismay, someone left a real muktza on his desk, on his tender. Now he knows a yid didn't put it on Shabbos, so he was there from Bein Hashmoshes. So the whole Friday night, there was a real muktza on his tender. And he's very unhappy, because Hilchas book Bosis muktza dictates he can't use the tender. Even if he'll call a guy to take off the muktza, but the tender is a Bosis. However, there's a Gemara that gives us a different direction. The Gemara in Sukkah Mem Gimel and Beis, nothing to do with Hilchas Shabbos, but as we know that the Arava, taking the Arava, is even Doicha Shabbos on Shvi, the 7th day of Yom Tov. So this is what Chazal held. The Baisusim held, I mean it's the wrong word, it's Narishkeit, but they wanted to sabotage this Avodah. So when the Yidden brought the Aravas to the Beis HaMikdash Erev Shabbos, they took these Aravas and they put a stone on top of it. So you won't be able to do it on Shabbos like our foolish Shita and not like your Shita. Okay. So the Maisa, they just seem to have sabotaged the whole Avodah. So the next morning an Amoritz came, he didn't know much, he goes, what's going on? We can't have stones. They picked up the stones and threw it to the side. Oh, Baruch Hashem, so now you can use the Aravas. Frag the Orzarua and Hilchas Shabbos Siman Peivav Ois Gimel. What does it help the Amaratzim throwing away the stones? Why is it a Bosis? So he says a few words. The lav kol kamine de inish lesser dava shel chaver shleimi daita. Anu yisai. To make a Bosis, you have to be the Bailim. And the Baisusim were ganav, not Bailim. Now what's the pshat? The teretz is l'dverinus masik midvash. Because the issur Bosis is not exerera chas v'shalom. It's a logic. You decided to make your item a Bosis, fine. Live with the Shabbos with that decision. But if someone else did it, we find that in other areas, in Hilchas Truma, in very chomodik halachos, that ednom oisad avashein shaloi. But here it's more logical. Because Lamaisa, it's not yours to make it a Bosis. So here we have the second Yisoid in Bosis. Number 1 was Maniach. Number 2 was Bailim. Okay? Now, Oy Bazoy, I should mention that the Stender is not a Bosis. Now, it doesn't mean the muktza is not a muktza, because muktza is objective. So you could take the Stender, which is not Bosis, tilt the Stender, and the muktza goes falling off. So if the Stender would have been a Bosis, you can't even do that. But since it's only Bail, it's not Bailim, it's not a Bosis, shake it off and use a Stender, Gesundheit. One more question I must mention, and then we'll have the 3-word Yisoid, and then we'll apply it Lamaisa. This is seems to be very simple, that Lamaisa, you have a Bosis situation or not. Now let's say you don't have a Bosis situation, okay? Let's say Lamaisa, someone who's not the Bailim, put it on. Or it was Shachar. So the question is, let's say you have a Stender with a muktza, and you don't mind, keep the muktza there. You'll move the Stender, use the Stender, but you won't move the muktza. The halacha is, in a few places in Hilchas Shabbos, but for example, Shin Yod Tziv Ches, that even though you're not moving muktzah directly, but Lamaisa, it's called tiltum and atzad, and that should not be done when avoidable. And so the halacha, the Mechaber says, is that instead of moving the Stender back and forth and ignoring the muktzah, once and for all, tilt the Stender, that's called nir, shake the muktzah. In other words, tiltul min hatzad, moving the Stender and indirectly moving the muktzah, is mutter, l'tzarech dav a heta. I want to use a Stender. But why rely on a heta over and over? Why don't you shake it off once, get rid of the problem, and then move the Stender beheta gam? This is called nir, and this is advisable when shy. Now sometimes if you have a very expensive muktza and you're going to be meneir, it's going to break, so don't do it. But nir, when possible, should be done. In fact, the Shulchan Aruch gives us a little of a job. In Shin Tes Siv Gimel, you have a basket full of Paris, and your mazel is a stone at the bottom in it. So now you have a Bosis for heta and issur. So we'll soon see it's mutter to move the barrel, the kilkula, the basket, because it's roiv heta. But still, when possible, take the basket, turn it upside down, and if it's fruit that doesn't get spoiled, like oranges or apples that won't get spoiled, it's not like a moist fruit, then everything will disperse, and take all the fruit back, put it in the barrel, and leave the stone on the ground. This way you avoid moving the stone indirectly. That's called tiltul min hatzad. And again, the one last question is a briefcase. A briefcase, the Bachram's knapsack, of the boy's knapsack. So Lamaisa, typically, it's a mixture. The question is, how do we look at a mixture of heta and issur? So the emes is that here we're talking about, he put a bekavana, and he's the bailim. So the truth is, from the case of kilkel we just mentioned, we have guidance. Because you told me there's fruit and a stone, and it's not a Bosis. Why is it not a Bosis? Because if the roiv of it, or the roiv value of it, is not muktzah, we use the simple attitude of basar roiv. So here we see that the side of Bosis, when it's Bosis v'heta and issa, is totally in roiv. In other words, if you have only muktza, like the first case we mentioned, deal with it. But if you have a mixture, then you go basar roiv. Now the big question is, of course, how do you determine what does roiv mean? Is roiv mean in pieces? Not mustav. Does roiv mean in monetary value? How much it's worth? So lamaisa, a laptop in a briefcase with the Gemara, I mean the Gemara is worth billions, but a laptop is a little more expensive. Do we go bust up the financial value? So until today we would say, what's the shaila? And that's typically what it is, right? But yet we find, Mishnah Berurah tells us in Shin Yud, Sif Kat Lamed Gimel, if let's say the Chala Oilam, the heta is worth kamat nothing. But to you it has some kind of sentimental value and it's worth everything. So we don't say but l'daitoi, but if to you the heta is worth more, it's okay. Takert also. Now the big question is, almost all halachos is but l'daitoi, it's kaladam. We don't go bust each individual. Why, when it comes to buses, do we look at the person? The answer, I think, is masuk mitvash, the same yisayid. It's not a gzeira, it's a decision. So if for you this is valuable, then it's valuable. What do I care about Yenim? Looking at Yenim's appreciation of the item is almost like saying, non-bailim, run the show. That's what it is. It's me, not someone else. What do you tell me? He likes it, but I don't. So I understand very well that we don't go basa oilam, we go basa individual. It's very much subjective. Now this will give us a better appreciation of the next halacha, which I know is a chiddush, but I think you could definitely be saimach on it, and it's extremely important. Someone asked Rav Moshe in the Tshuvas and Chelik Kesim and Chav Beis, you've cut in Yuzayim, he asked them point blank, you have $100 on a table and you have a siddur. A regular siddur, not something that's worth $1 million. A regular siddur. Or you have $100 and you have glasses. How do we determine if it's a bus of heta or issa? Because both of them are important. So Moshe says it emphatically. It's not totally in monetary value. Because the Maisa Siddur is worth much less than $100. But it's totally what you need to use right now. And therefore he says, if you need the glasses to daven, that's worth more than the $100. If you need the Siddur, it's more than $100. And the Shmir Shabbos says the exact same thing. Basa chashivus be'eni adam ba'oisa isha. And I want to mention the Chazon Ish quote in Orchos Rabbeinu, Aleph Kuf Yates, B'Shem, the Stipler said that the Chazon Ish told him, when it comes to buses, we look at what's needed for you. And the best raya, he says, is you have a beautiful table that has thousands of dollars leichter, but the challah does the trick. How much is the challah worth? Okay, your wife's challah is worth a lot, but it doesn't come close to leichter. Teretz is, I can't eat leichter. The whole Shabbos, the whole table, the whole Ner Shabbos is for the Suda. So the challah is, for me, more valuable. Rav Moshe Shita is definitely found in earlier poskim. You look in the Derech HaChaim, Muktzah Lamed Beis, a heta chashiv loy, achshav yoisa mino issa. So Rav Moshe Shita is based on the understanding of buses. It's not totally in what is actually valuable, it's totally what's needed. Rav Shlomo Zalman in the Tshuvas, in the back of Tatulei Shabbos, it's Siman Dalid, he says that perhaps the Hagdara would be, if you had to decide which of the two would you like, you can only have one. Choose your preference. So it's a little more, it's a little more of a chiddush. It's not totally in what you need now. It's totally what you would be mavata to get the other thing. And according to that, Taka, $100 on a siddur, on a regular Tuesday, you would take the $100. Now, Rav Shlomo Zalman is Rav Shlomo Zalman, but I must mention, as I told you, Rav Moshe and the Shmir Shabbos and others, plus the Derech HaChaim. In fact, there's the Sefer Shulchan Shlomo, not Rav Shlomo Zalman, the Rav Shlomo Mir lived over 20 years ago. So his lashon in Shin Yud Siv Zayin is Azlina Mai De'ika Chashiv Lididei. It doesn't just mean me versus someone else. It means what's needed. So I think we could definitely rely on this. That Lamaisa, if you have a item that you need on Shabbos, and the other item is more valuable, but it's of no need to you, it becomes a basis for the heta. And as Mishnah Berurah explains, the issur is bottled to it. So now you have a bosis for heta, and you're allowed to move it. So here we have the following yisoidis, and a good point is to remember, if you want to remember the klalam, the word boisim, beis, sin, mem, bailim, shavius, and mem is maniach versus shachach. Okay? So let's try to apply this lamaisa. So lamaisa, in the case of shavius, avada, you go basa, what's more valuable? And I must mention, there's an interesting question that the Bialocha asked in Shin Tes Dalet, if you're so convinced that Shabbos makes a difference, so how could it be that if you put the stone b'kavana on the barrel, you can't move the barrel? The stone is valueless, and the wine is worth a barrel of wine. Why is it taka a bosis? It's worth nothing, the muktza is nothing, and the food is everything. And the Torah says is pashut. He says, we're looking at the bosis, what's supporting the stone. The bosis is the actual top of the barrel, not the wine. You look at the bosis, not the wine. So that's why the side of Shabbos is very much important for our sugya. Now let's start lamaisa. Let's say a person has, and this nageh, midi Shabbos b'Shabbat. He has in his drawer, he has clothing he needs, but he hides his wallet in the bottom. So he has heta, and he has a little bit of muktza, but he needs his socks more than he needs his wallet, so he's okay. Or you have a freezer door that mostly have challahs, and there is a piece of raw chicken, frozen chicken. So the question is the following. Every Shabbos I think about it. I open the drawer, there is muktza there, but it's roiv heta. Or I open the freezer, and there's roiv heta, I'm not worried. But here's the shayla. Erev Shabbos, why don't you be a little chacham eina b'roishi? Take off the frozen meat from the freezer door and put it into the freezer. Or don't hide your wallet, dafka in the drawer you need, hide it somebody else. Why? Because madach on Shabbos, when you want to move an item, you try to we try to avoid tiltum and atzad, and we shake it out. So if you could prevent the problem from Erev Shabbos and take out the muktza Erev Shabbos and prevent tiltum and atzad, isn't that posh? You have to do that? So this is the question that always bothered me, because anytime you open the freezer door, you spot the muktza, you get nervous. So Rav Moshe in Chelik Kesem and Chaval Sivkot and Ches says this regarding a loose leaf that has written papers and blank paper. And the assumption is that blank papers is muktza. So he says, if it's one notebook, that's one, so it becomes heta. But if it's separate papers, so hayaluchu dev. You have to take out the blank papers before Shabbos. Obviously, he felt that if you could avoid tiltum and atzad erev Shabbos, do it. This is the shita of Rabbi Yashiv, and again, Rabbi Yashiv, I found this in 5 of Svarim quoting him, the Shvos Yitzchak, the Ha'ores, the Hilchah Shabbos to Shabbos, Shalmi Yonason, and the Mara Shabbos. And Rabbi Yashiv definitely said this. He says, Madach Zechiv on Shabbos to shake it out, Koskin Erev Shabbos. Now, why is it a Madach? Very possible. Because if you make Niyah on Shabbos, you end up moving it once with a Heta. If you take it out before Shabbos, you didn't do even one issur. So you're better off. So according to this, and that's a little of the issue, like the Shmir Shabbos and Chav Peivav says, Ratzui lahoyrid es ha-muktza koidim Shabbos mihadelas. Now, Lamaisa, maybe you could even bring a raya to this. The Mishnah Berurah in Shin Ches Sivkot and Yud Beis says you're allowed to use a hammer to crack a nut. But let's say you have a nutcracker right there. If it's easy to do it without coming onto the heta of moving muktza, do it as such. Don't use muktza unless you have no other choice. No, here you have a choice. Remove the food Erev Shabbos, the muktza Erev Shabbos, and do it behet gum. However, the problem is that this shaila is not a naya shaila. Maybe the freezer shaila is a naya shaila. But the concept of having a heta and issur, or bailim, non-bailim, a case where there's muktza but there's not a bosis, is a Gemara, is a Mishnah. And nobody, until the Heintige Poiskim say, if you could take it up before Shabbos, do that. And the question is, why not? So this led both Rav Sternbuch in the Tshuva Chelik Zayin, Siman Ayin Zayin, Sivkot Ayin Tes, the Shevet HaKosi, Chelik Gimel, Siman Kuf Chav Gimel, and they both say, we never, Yishtamit, Bepoiskim, they say this Chiddush. Now, they don't say a svara, but if it's not there, it's probably not a chiyuv. I did see the Orchos Shabbos in Amud Chelik Beis, Amud Kufla, Amud Gimel. He also says the Rehitas HaPoiskim, there's no such chiddush. But then he adds two svaras. Number one, it's a big tircha. Every Erev Shabbos, you have to go to the freezer, check if there's meat there. Especially if you have a drawer that has muktza or not, you have to check it every drawer. And number two, he says, maybe on Shabbos, there's a chiyuv of Shmir Shabbos. Who said Erev Shabbos, you have to do something to avoid an issur on Shabbos, which is not so convincing when we put on a blech Erev Shabbos. But anyhow, Lamaisa, I could say the following. Rabbi Yashib is quoted as saying that Hayorei Dvar Hashem should take off the muktza before Shabbos. Now, if you could do it, fine. But my experience shows that Erev Shabbos is hectic enough and tense enough without another job. You have another Erev Shabbos job. Run around the whole house, taking out all the muktza. So if you want to do it yourself, fine. Don't give it to the Rebbetzim. They're busy enough. And if Yorei Dvar Hashem should do it, do it. But if it comes to more tension Erev Shabbos, I think Shabbos Moichel Toivus. Especially if Paiskim say it's mutter. Because this is something that if you start getting into it, Ein Bayis Asher Ein Sham such a shayla. And it becomes another Erev Shabbos frenzy, which really I think we're better off without it. Question. A person left a pocketbook which is full of muktza, and the pocketbook is definitely a Bosis on Shabbos, because the pocketbook was made to keep the wallet and the makeup, whatever it is, but it's all muktza. But they put the pocketbook on the door of a closet. And Ben Hashmoshes came, and the pocketbook was resting comfortably on the door. The question is, does the door become a Bosis? This could also be Negeya. Someone asked me, he said he put into in his front door, he has a little monitor, a little small monitor, but it's very valuable and very effective, and it keeps, monitoring what's going on in the house. Then he chapped, whenever he opens the door, he moves the monitor. Now the monitor is a real muktza. So the question is, when you have muktza on a door, how does halacha talk about opening the door? So we would say, what's the shayla? You badavka mounted the monitor or put the pocketbook on the door. Not a shachar, it's a maniach. But then again, there's halacha, which until today we'd find puzzling, and now we'll find hopefully Mosek Vidvash. In Reish Ayin Zayin Sif Aleph, the Mechaber discusses the minig in those days seemingly was that they put candles sometimes on the door itself. I think Pashat, it was a small house, big family, there's no room for candles. Also, you wanted to keep the candles out of reach. But Kitzah, that was the prevalent custom. They kept candles on the door. So the Mechaber discusses opening the door and closing it. If it's a psik reish that you blow out the fire, so it's an issur chomer. The nidoin is about the fact that there's a concern that you might blow out the candle. Frag de bialacha, why isn't anybody concerned about a Bosis? You willingly put the candle on the door. You did it bekavana, meiniach, bailim. Why is not Bosis? Zakti mishtabura sif cotton zayin, because a door is not made to be a Bosis for your candle. A door is made to close the door, and keep the heat in and keep the cold out, and open and close. A door is a bottle to the bias, not to the candle. Now for us, again, it's Masik B'Tvash. The Yisayda Bosis is not Xera. Bosis is my decision to make the computer desk a Bosis to the computer. But no one makes the door that now its function is to hold the candle. It happens to be a convenient eitzah. But we cannot say that it becomes a Bosis to the candle, not to the house. It retains its status of a door. A door is not muktza. This is the Mishnah Berurah's Yisoid, that it simply can be, like in our Nusach, it's not Dachib Yadayim, it's not Bottle, it's not Tuffle, it is a door. Now, Lamaisa, the Bialacha quotes the Yishalmi in Shabbos Per Gimel Halacha Zayim that says the reason why there's no problem of a candle on the door is because it was shachach. So Zok the Bialacha, according to the Yishalmi, there would be a problem of Bosis by something on the door. Maybe the pshat is once you put it on, you want it. Lamaisa, Mishtabura said, the Bialacha concludes, Ulamaisa, Tzarechiyah. But Lamaisa, I did see the Oznidbru, the Shmir Shabbos, the Archa Shabbos, Shalmi Yonason, all the Heintika Paiskim do feel that Lamaisa, you could be makel that a door does not become muktza doesn't become Bosis to a muktza, it retains its function. The truth be told, much later in Shulchan Aruch, in Taf Reish Pei, in Shemar Makam, Hilchos Chanukah, the Torah brings Ram Rutenberg's Rebbe, Reb Shmuel, would dafka light the nearest Chanukah on the door, again to keep it out of reach. And the Sharatzi and Sivkot and Dalit says there's no problem of Bosis. So I guess in Hilchos Chanukah we can learn Hilchos Shabbos that Lamaisa, the Psak Halacha Lamaisa is, although I do know the Yishalmi is Machmir, but it's a classic Machlokes Bavli and Yishalmi, and we go with the Bavli. Question: a freezer, the same question obviously, is Negeya to a freezer door. Now, if you have some usable Shabbos for challah on the freezer door, and afrashas challah and raw chicken, so B'chesed will say it's bottled to the het. But let's say, Punk, this Shabbos you notice that all you have on the freezer door is afrashas challah and or raw meat. So now the door, l'chayr, was a Bosis bein hashmashos to muktzah. There's no contest, there's no heter. And it was definitely maniach, definitely bailam. So here we could use that yisoid, and Takashmir Shabbos, and Mr. Zalman says this, Rabbi Yashva says it also, that we could rely on the shita that a door is not bottled to something. A door is bottled to the refrigerator, freezer, or the house. A door is bottled, what is a door of? So even though it happened to be you maniach b'kavana muktza, it doesn't become a Bosis. But again, it's still opening and closing. So if you could rearrange before Shabbos, take the raw meat and put it in the back of the freezer, that is definitely a better choice.
Why is it different than a tray in a refrigerator?
Oh, I want to get to that too. Wait, you're right. You're right. Now, a pocketbook on the door of the closet, the same heta, plus the truth is, a door of a closet is not made to hold the pocketbook. You could say the freezer door, I could understand the Yishalmi, it's part of the freezer, but a pocketbook not belong on the door of the of a closet. Some shuls, I think in Shem Shabbos, one of the doors still has it. They have on the door, they have a pushka, a wooden pushka. So you open and close the door, you're moving money. True, but this would be a door does not become a Bosis. Kitchen cabinet that you could have sometimes you hang muktza, you hang a garbage, which we'll soon see is muktza in many cases. Same beside, it's not bottled to muktza, it has a function in the bayis. Now, the question that person asked about a monitor on a door, I think the same het applies. You put it there because it's convenient as far as its ability to keep watch what's going on. But it's not that you want the door to become bottled to the monitor. So it's a house door, and we definitely rely on the Bavli, that a door does not become a Bosis to mukt. So Zalman has an incredible mashal of this in Minchas Shleim Tinyana Siman Tezvav. He says the whole sugim Shin Lamed Ches about a kli hashmas coil is a muktza, right? A grag is muktza. So he says, how could you open the door if you lived in the olden days? And even today, some people have it. A door knocker is muktza. You can't knock on the door with a door knocker, so it's muktza. So whenever you open and close the door, you're moving muktzah. So his teretz is the same yisoid. And he says it, that just like Nera Chayri Adelas is not Bosis, so too, door knocker. Now until today, you say, what does that mean? Now you see, the yisoid is a door does not become bottle and tuffle to a muktzah. It becomes bottle and tuffle to its base that it's attached to. Now Lamaisa, as we'll soon see, there's another svara to be makel by this case of a door knocker, because a door knocker is a klisha malachtir le'issa. Now, yesh lachkar, if you have a hammer on the table and you put it b'kavona to be for whole Shabbos, is the table a Bosis? Yes, right? You're the bailim, it's maniach. But then again, the table can't be worse than the Bosis. It takes on the identity of the Bosis, but not worse. Can I move the door, the hammer, the tzarach guf mekayim? Yes. So why can't I move the table tzarach guf mekayim? And taka, that's true. Some say klishim lachtel issa doesn't even make a Bosis because it's pretty movable. But the biggest chumrah is it becomes as muktza as the muktza. So in this case, even if we say the door is a Bosis to the door knocker, it's lachtel issa. Fine, I'm moving it to tzarach guf mekayim. So very often that heta applies as well. Someone asked me a beautiful shayla. I had a note because he touched upon many yisoidis. He has a closet door. Now let me be clear that there's a light in it, actually light in the mirror, and it's a pretty decent light. But you put it on or off, right? So some closets, you open the closet, the light goes on. So that you can use on Shabbos. Many hotels, you find out Friday night, you open the closet, all of a sudden light goes on. So, beware. But I'm talking about a simple closet that has a light in it. So he had a baby, and I said, very convenient. I put the light on before Shabbos. I open the door. When I need light, I have light. When the baby finally falls asleep, I close the door, and it's dark. The question is, he's opening and closing a door that has a light in it. So we told him two things. First of all, the closet door, again, is not bottled to the light. We have the heter of the bavli. But more than that, this is not similar to the case of ner. A ner is the most muktza of all muktza. The Gemara says ner is muktza machmas gufay because it's not a keli. So therefore, the ner makes the leichter and the tray and the table muktza. But a light of today is a keli. Especially it's an LED. It's not at all eish. There's no eish there. It's a regular keli. So it's a regular klisha malachtil issur. So that's why this wasn't of concern to us at all. Number one, you have the bavli, and even not so, it's not the muktza of eish. Question in the yeshiva all the time, a bacher left paper, blank paper in the Gemara. And now here comes Shabbos. The Gemara is a bosis to the paper. I can't learn Gan Shabbos. I have a good Shabbos. He's out. Now, is that true? So the MS is that if it's shachach, okay, he put it in Friday, if I take it out, but he put it in Shabbos, Erev Shabbos, Kavanah. So let me be very clear. Paper is still muktza. Paper, the Magen Avraham says, used to be chasar and kiss, because it was valuable. Today, most places hold it's not chasar and kiss. Maybe if you designate it just for writing and you won't use anything else, it is. But let's assume paper is muktzah. Okay, that's for that matter. So the question is, if it has all the qualifications, l'chayri can't move the Gemara. So l'maisa, it doesn't seem correct, and there's a very good reason for that. First of all, the Mishnah Berurah in Kuf Nun Dal Tivkot Lamed Aleph, quoting the Sefer Chassidim, one of the Gedolei Bali Atois, one of the Rishonim, Tafsaf Kuf Zayin. Don't put blank paper in the Gemara. He doesn't say that Lashon, but he says Kuntresim that were not written on. See, if you have your right, you have notes, you only wrote a small chiddush, so the whole paper is mutter. But let's say you have blank paper. So Mr. Berurah quotes Sefer Chassidim, it's a bezayin. And the truth is, you're making your Gemara a folder. I am putting it there, I want to get ready for the shir. I also wrote notes when I was in yeshiva. So put it on the side, put it in a folder. Why are you putting in the Gemara and making it your folder? So, oy bazoi, we can say the following. Another zil bosa timer, another masik mitvash. The side of bosis is that you made this as a base for that, so it's tafel and bottle for that. But chas v'shalom to say that a Gemara is a folder for paper, the Gemara is a bosis for paper, it's unthinkable. Now, lamaisa, people always say, but I put in the Gemara to be able to write in it, so it's really has a kedusha. I don't know. Be it Mr. Berurah, Sefer Chassidim do not say that. I did see the Marshag in Chelik Beis, Ayin Gimel. He says the minig, people put paper in the Gemara. Obviously, different type of paper in those days, but maybe it's mutter because only Torah Shabbal Peh. And Lamaisa, he says another svara that Lamaisa that the fact that you want to use it. This is what he says. Okay, it's his opinion. But Lamaisa, as I told you, the Sefer Chassidim, Mishnah Berurah, I did see the Torah Lishma, that's the Ben Ish Chai's Tshuva Sefer. He says that also one should not put blank paper in a Gemara. His svaras, you might not end up using it at all. So it's Tama B'Zayim. So Lamaisa, even Marshag is not Mata Shabbos. He's just Mata during the week. Then I saw Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe takes an interesting approach in Chelik Dal Tzim and Ayin Beis. Rav Moshe says that Lamaisa, if you put it in to use it, could be attache, it's not muktza. It's not a problem, sorry, because you're putting it to L'Shem learning. But then he says, but then if you put it in and you're allowed to put it in, then take becomes a bosis. You can't tansabay the chasidus. If you want to say you're allowed to put it in, then it's a bosis. That's what Moshe says. So Moshe says that basically it's a bosis, and therefore you can't do it before Shabbos, or you can't use the Gemara. Now again, it's a chiddush to me to say a Gemara is a bottle and bosis to paper. Now, the oid kasha that we'll soon see, the Chayei says that if a person put a few pennies in his pocket, the kavana, in his weekday jacket pocket, and then he forgot that his jacket wasn't the cleanest, he wants to wear that jacket on Shabbos. So Chayadim says, even though it was a Bosis bein hashmoshes, but a few pennies does not make a jacket of Bosis. So how could a few pennies of paper make a Bosis to a ganze Gemara? But I'll tell you a beautiful teretz. If you put it in b'kavana now to be in the Gemara, so you want it to be there. So you are being mavatlet, you're a strange person. And Moshe himself says that, as I'll show you soon. But no doubt about it, the Torah Lishma, that's the Ben Ish Chai in his Chuvas Shin Vav, says not to put paper in the Gemara, and that's the right way to do it. If someone did put paper in his Gemara, then Enechanami, we have a heta to say it can't become a Bosis, a Gemara not a Bosis, to blank paper. Now we have enough information to talk about the new type of garbage that's not a regular a freestanding garbage can. It's a shelf in the cabinet, it's a drawer, you open it up and close it. And so Lamaisa, here's the question. In a regular garbage can, you have in the kitchen, you could use it. Because don't forget, you're allowed to touch muktza. It's a mechaba and ramah. The issur is moving muktza. If you use the garbage can a whole Shabbos without moving it, there's no problem. But when you have a garbage in a drawer, so you're moving it in and out. Worse yet, if the garbage is classified as muktza, so then the drawer is a bona fide base. You want it. It's maniach, it's bailam, it's kavanah, it's everything. So how could you open and close the drawer if the garbage is muktza and the drawer is a base? You have constant tiltul muktza. Okay, you want to say it's kalachayad. It's also not true, because the drawer is kol kulei muktza. It's a Bosis. So lamaisa, the redeeming factor here is that the poskim say if there's usable, edible food in the garbage, so we go back to the old yisoid. The half of bilka is worth 5 cents, but all the garbage in your garbage is worth 0. 5 cents is worth more than 0. So if there's an edible food in the garbage, then it's Bosis for het and issur. And in our garbages today, they say you could feed the entire India with all the food, but there's plenty of food there. Now, so that's why typically a garbage can be moved and the drawer can be open. But the issue is when you threw out the garbage before Shabbos and you didn't empty the can, and bein hashmashos, all you had was garbage. So here we say migius katzoi, what you threw out becomes garbage, it becomes muktza. And it becomes muktza l'kula Shabbos. And that's why it is kedai, I'm not saying you have to do it, but it's kedai when possible before Shabbos to empty out the garbage. You put a fresh bag in, and then for the rest of Shabbos, what's in the garbage? Heta and issur. And the heta is more valuable than the issur. Now, if someone wants to have a better eitzah, he's afraid he might not empty the garbage before Shabbos, he's too busy. So the Welt has an eitzah, and I found the Heintige Pois can say this, that before you put the garbage bag in the drawer, put a clean one or two, even one's enough, put it on the bottom of the drawer. Then you put it in your garbage bag and use gesundheit. Because then even if the garbage taka is muktza, which it could be, but the bag is still usable. So you're opening and closing it because you have heta and issur. So you're opening it, putting garbage in, and closing it because it's a Bosis for the heta and the issur, and the heta is worth more. So this is a eitzah to avoid problems. Another question I want to mention, which is really for a different share, but let's say in a typical Yiddish home, you have a bottle, a wine bottle, a grape juice bottle, a water bottle. It's reusable. It's not a shever keli, it's a keli gomer. So the halach is, if you threw out a keli gomer on Erev Shabbos, it's not muktza. You can't make a keli into muktza. It's only a shever keli. So how do you look at a full keli? How do you look at a disposable? Is it a keli? Is it a keli gshalem? So if it's a keli shalom, that would be another tzad to be made. Now the concept of a drawer is a share for itself, but what's the negel in yanenu, as I told you earlier, the freezer drawer is the same problem. It's heta and issur, but you're moving the entire shelf, the entire drawer. So if in a rare case in your freezer shelf is only muktza, you have a problem, which is almost never happens. There's always some type of a heta, and the heta is a piece of cake or a challah, which you need either the two. So we're back to Bosis for heta and issur, and you're allowed to move the drawer in and out. Again, unless it's a rare case, it's all muktza. Is there an inyan before Shabbos taking out the muktza from the freezer? The answer is no, it's not shaykh. Where are you going to put it? That's the whole freezer. So you're not mechuyev to run to someone's house and put the frozen muktza because that's not reasonable. So this shelf is the heta is because of heta v'issa, which is almost always the case. So lemaisa, this is the case of a regular drawer. Now, someone asked me a question about a junk drawer. I said, what's that? He said, oh, you don't know what you're missing. So he says it has everything under the sun in that drawer. I don't like the word junk. I'll use the word miscellaneous drawer. Like a lashon key is always better. But lemaisa, the point here is this miscellaneous drawer is mamash our sugim the ganze ganska. You can't be menayer on Shabbos, or else you'll have a mabel. That's what I'm told. There's so much stuff in it. You can't take out all the heta before Shabbos because that's the whole chachma of it. The whole patent is everything is there. So if we assume that there's enough heta that outweighs the other stuff, you have a regular heta v'issa. So there's no near, there's no erev Shabbos. So this miscellaneous drawer, l'chayra, is the lifesaver, because on tehait, it shouldn't be a problem. Now, lamaisa, if someone again has socks in a pair of drawers and he puts them in a wallet or something like that, so that's Rav Moshe's heta would be if you need a sock. Now, if you have just socks that you don't need on Shabbos, then you're in trouble. Then it's like a Bosis for the more valuable wallet than, of course, the socks that you don't need. Now, another question, a person has a wallet and he has a pocket paper mincha ma'ariv that he uses when he's traveling and he has a place to tell me with what to daven. He has big money and he has a credit card and he has his pocket mincha ma'ariv. So we like to be very positive, but you're not going to use that mincha ma'ariv on Shabbos. So Rav Moshe said will not apply. And also a wallet's made for muktza, for money, not for mincha ma'ariv. So that's why we assume that a regular wallet is considered muktza, even though you might have a bencher or mincha ma'ariv, but that definitely is not what its kavanah is for. Another beautiful shaila is the question of begodim that have muktza. I'll tell you what, ma'aseh shehaya. Someone had a very nice shirt he was wearing on Friday. It was a white shirt, but a weekday shirt. And he's had money, he wanted to get rid of it, then he shouldn't lose it. So he put it into his shirt pocket, hung it up in the closet, so even if a ganav comes, you don't look in pockets, so he thought that's safe. Fine. Lamaisa, his Shabbos shirt got stained. It happens when you go away for Shabbos, go to Chayis for a convention, you only have one Shabbos shirt and it got stained. So I wear my weekday shirt. Wait a second. You put money, b'kavana, meniach, bailam, into that pocket. Now, that's Bosis. You can't say my toys makes it shachach. My toys makes it a toy, it's not shachach. So the question is, can he wear the shirt? Or more commonly, his jacket gets a terrible stain. He needs a jacket, but his weekday jacket is full of muktza. Again, miniach, kavana, baila. So lamaisa, here the paiskim, it's actually a ramah, but Mr. Brewer brings it out beautifully and makes the following chilik. And that is a regular pocket in a jacket. So the pocket itself is an independent Bosis. You can put things in, take it out, that's a Bosis. But it's not enough to make the entire jacket a Bosis to the pocket. The jacket is a jacket, and you have an independent Bosis that's functional. So if you put a wallet into the pocket, pants or jacket pocket, into the pocket, b'kavana meniach bailam. So the pocket is muktza, but not the jacket. So you could take the jacket itself, invert it, shake it, whatever you want, shake the muktza out, and then you're left with the following. The jacket is fine to wear, don't use the pocket, because the pocket was a Bosis bein hashmashis. But in contrast to that, typical shirt pockets, now today they don't make shirt pockets anymore, I don't even have one, but a typical shirt pocket is a piece of material, is sewed onto the shirt. And the back of it, the back base of the pocket, quote unquote, is the shirt. And Takas, Mr. Brewer says, in that case, then the shirt is one Bosis for the money or wallet, and Taka, the entire shirt becomes a Bosis. So even after you shake it out, it will not help because the shirt is a Bosis. And this, the Mr. Brewer, the Ramah and Shin Yud Sif Zayin, he makes this beautiful, simple chilik. A shirt pocket is a Bosis. A jacket or pants pocket is a Bosis in a beged. The beged is independent. So the pocket is awesome, but the jacket itself is mut. Now, I should mention, if for whatever reason you have a question in your Shabbos begodim, I think it's almost never a problem of Bosis, because it's always shachach. You went to a chasana, Friday morning went to a bris, and whatever, all these showers that we hear, and he left his wallet, his cell phone, whatever. Relax. You didn't put it for Shabbos, right? No one does that. Now, so what do? So then, you want to wear your Shabbos garment. So shake out the muktza, and here's a chap. You could even, if you're handy, take the pocket itself, and from the back, and shake out the pocket on the floor. Because the pocket is not a bosis. Even when it's holding the muktza, because that's shachach. So you could invert the jacket or shake out the pocket, hold onto the pocket. The pocket is not a bosis, even now. Once you get the muktza out, you can wear the jacket freely. So this is something that's important to mention, but I think b'derech klal kamat, we don't have a Shabbos beged that becomes, unless you put it b'kavana, which is almost never the case. Now, lamaisa, the Paiskim ask, someone asked, the Mr. Brewer quotes the Chai Adam in Shen Yod Tzif Katan Lamed Aleph. If you put items of very little value, a few prutas in your jacket, b'kavana. Let's say you wanted to, on the way to shul, that would be shacham. You put it b'kavana to be there. He says it's not mistaver that a jacket is but a few pennies. And Mr. Brewer quotes this. And why do I say this? Because Rav Moshe in Chelik Dal Siman Ayin Gimel asked a question. How can a barrel of wine become a bosis for a stone? A wine is worth much more. So Rav Moshe says that if you put the stone on the kavana to make it a bosis, so you're overriding the lack of Shavios. That's what you want it to be. So Rav Moshe is the one that says putting on the kavana overrides its lack of value. So Rav Moshe L'Shitase would say if you put paper in, and L'Shitase you're allowed to put it in, and it becomes a bosis, a few cents worth of paper is daicha Gemara, Teretz is, that's your decision. A poor decision, but it's your decision. And you want to be that, and that's where Moshe held the Shitasai, that the paper in the Gemara would and should be a problem. Next question, which Lamaisa is important to mention, is a stroller, wheelchair, or a walker, or the like. Now these things are used to help people walk, or wheel the baby, but very often there are muktzah items put there b'kavana. Before Shabbos, you put it in, and if you put it on Thursday to stay indefinite, that's considered meniach. So you have to realize that if you put it into the actual base of the stroller or the wheelchair, so the wheelchair is a basis for the muktza. You put it in, that was your decision. So you have to be careful, there shouldn't be any muktza before Shabbos. Also, when you have a basket on the bottom, something that's part of the keli, it has the same halacha. So if you want to use a wheelchair or stroller or a walker on Shabbos, try to get rid of the muktza before Shabbos. Question. Someone went to a Shalom Zacha and he left his shirayim, which was a funny shirayim, a gal shell, pistachio shells. So he put it on a plate, pure muktza. Even animals can eat that. Nuts, shells, pistachio, almonds, bekitza, he left muktza and he went on. Now the shaila is, can someone else move it? So if it's offensive, if it's grav shalrei, it's a heta. But typically, it's not offensive, it's just inconsiderate of the first person. So the shaila is that avada right now, this plate is a basis for the shells. The shells are worth 0. But again, if you made a basis and you want to be a basis, so that overrides the value. So you have a basis for issur. What's the heta? So lamaisa, here the difference is that Ben Hashmashas came and left, and there was no basis. The basis was created on Shabbos. Who said basis becomes on Shabbos? So this is the big sugya of muktza, of basis on Shabbos. But to make a long story short, almost all paiskim say that this is a modified type of basis. What I mean to say is pashut. You have a plate on Shabbos, even a expensive china plate, and you put on shells, eggshells, peanut shells, whatever it is. So if now it's a basis, it's a basis. What do you want to do? You can't change the world. It's a basis. But lamaisa, if a guy or someone or it blew off, whatever, the muktza was taken off beheta, now the plate is not muktza because it wasn't muktza ben hashmashas. When was it muktza? As there was a basis. If you got rid of the muktza, you got rid of the basis. So the chiluk is a basis erev Shabbos remains basis l'entire iskatzoy l'kul yoma. Basis on Shabbos is a basis kozman. It's functioning as a basis. So zoktich sam soifa on the Magen Avram Shin Chesiv Kat Nun Aleph. And he says, if you have a muktzis, klifi agoyis, like I told you, toiv, before you start your eating, put a piece of challah, and then shell your nuts onto the plate, and then you have the basic heta of bosis for heta and issur, where the heta is worth more than the issur. Now, why he chapped on challah, if you know, it's just only because to make the heta of agav pas, but l'choira, the poskim seem to agree, it's lav dafka challah. You could put down a jelly bean or anything of value that's worth more than shells, and that outweighs it. Now, the only question that bothered me is, it clearly says, put down the challah first, and then shell your nuts. And what's wrong if you first shell your nuts, and then put down the jelly bean or challah? So Lamaisa, it seemed that there is no difference. As long as when you want to move it is bosis for heta, you got the heta. And the Mishnah in Shin Ches, Sif Katan Chav Zayin, is a very, Mishnah in Sif Katan Kuf Te Zayin says, Efsha Shafil Lechatchila Mut Laniach Pas, after you put the muktza there. So I don't know why he wrote Efsha, but in Shin Yud he definitely says that it's mutter. So Lamais, this is the minika oilam. You keep heta there either before or afterwards, then you pick up the plate, beheta, spill it into the garbage, and then the plate becomes back ois muktza. Question, someone asked me this question, I had a note he was thinking. Someone came to his shul Shabbos, he had no talis to wear. He said, I'll give you a covered girdle. I have a weekday talis, it's very nice. And then he stopped in his tracks. What is in his weekday talis? Tefillin and a talis. Now, that's dachi b'yadayim. That is bailam and kavana. And the question is, what's worth more, talis or tefillin? Tefillin are what's more valuable, sayin kedusha and sayin monetary value. But then again, Lamaisa right now he needs a talis to give his friend. Va'oid, tefillin, and the worst scenario, the klisha malachta le'issa. Here's a tzarech mekayim. So the talis zekel was a bosis for heta and issa, but his mazel, the talis is more valuable now, and number two, tefillin is malachta le'issa. And especially if he had a siddur there or something else there, he really was in good luck, and that would be the heta. When you have talis or tefillin on a stender, you zichel out to move for the same reason, because it's only malachta le'issa, and also the one that's not the bailim, put it there, and that's not a concern. Two more questions I wanted to mention. Light covers, people have these light covers go on the lights, or if you still have a rotary phone at home, and rotary phone, any landline phone at home, you might have these decorative phone covers, like you have challah decals. Is that muktza, is that, putting it on Shabbos, is that a muktza of bosis or not? So it sounds like a real bosis. You're putting the phone cover on top of the phone, or the light switch cover on top of the light switch. But Zokt, Rabbi Yashiv, that's a mistake. This is not a bosis for the muktza. This is a function for the person. He wants the Shabbos phone to look nice. He wants to have the outlet to cover, so he puts a plastic in it. He wants the light should not be accessible for children. So it's not a bosis for the muktza. Bosis means the base on the bottom, not on top. So it's a tzarech ha'adam, and it's zichah, not a bosis. And last but not least, question I was thinking recently, and it's a good question with a better answer. I need to change the battery to my chassan's egg, whatever the story was, and to get the battery, whatever, it was a pretty big job. You have to open and put it in, and you put the battery in, and this makes the whole clock, the whole watch tick. So I started thinking, wait a second, why don't we say that the watch is a bosis for the battery? Don't forget, without the battery it doesn't work, and it has to be fit just perfectly. So isn't the watch a battery, isn't the watch a bosis to the battery? So then I realized it's a mistake, but I'll tell you what. You could have a car today, it's worth $50,000, right? Now, if you put gasoline in it, do we say, now, so a regular car is malachti le'issa, you can move it, you can move it, you can sit in the car, open the car door when there's no lights going on. Why don't we say the car is a bosis to gasoline? And gasoline is pure muktza. The teretz is, that's foolish. The ik bosis means it's bottle to the muktza. Here it's fakert. The car is not there to hold the gas. The battery, the watch is not there to hold the battery. So it happens to look like a bosis, but what's the ikka? The watch and the car, and it's not muktza. I'm going to talk to you all. You got something? I don't believe it. Yeah. You know.
Shame Egenshire tell like we get a character of Smith for today's share. Tell the guys sponsoring a share call Egenshire at 718-851-8651 on email IST at yeshiva.com. Chananya ben Akash Emer Tzkesh Baruch Hu L'Zachis Es Yisrael Lefigrach Hebel Termit Hashem Al Anei Chofes Aman Tzidka Yagdol Terviale.
Hey. 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 Oh. Hey. Hey. Amen.
Okay, everybody said the shear was a Bosis and he is side Ve'eches Bosis, and now we're going to top it off with the Sikkim. Shh.
Bosis in a few words means it's bottle, it's toffel, it's a decision to be dachi b'yadai and make it part of the muktza. And that's why lamaisa it has to be only maniach. Shachach is not a bosis because there's no intention to make a bosis. Maniach has two chedushim that it becomes a bosis. Number one, it becomes muktza, heta becomes issa. And even after the heta, the issa was removed, but once it's muktza, muktza remains. In other words, bosis means it becomes part of the muktza and has the identity of the muktza. Even when there's no problem of bosis, because either it's shachach or not bailen, it's preferable when shach to be menayer the muktza, so you don't have to constantly be relying on the heta of tiltul min atzad. Now, lamaisa, both the yisoidis of muktza is when it's only issa. When a person has heta that he needs now, chala versus leichta, that is not a problem of bosses. So the boisim, three conditions are bailim versus not bailim, shachach versus shavius versus if there's more heta than issa, and mem is meniach versus shachach. Lechatchila, there are poskim hold you should try to move the muktza anyhow before Shabbos if it's shaykh, but very often it's not shaykh. On a door, there's no buses, a pocketbook or a monitor on the door is not a problem. Freezer door is muktza, has muktza items, only muktza items, even that's not buses because it's not bottled to the food is bottled to the freezer. A door knocker is okay. We had two reasons we make it. You could open the door. A closet door with a light you could open and close because it's basically not the nair, that's the most intense muktza. Blank paper I think should not be put in the Gemara. It is muktza, but if you did keep it there, it's not a bosis. It's probably better to shake it out, but shaking out paper in the Beis Medrash is embarrassing, maybe quite abrius, so you could do it later. But basically, paper should not be kept in the Gemara. A garbage drawer is mutter to open and close, especially if you have an empty bag in it. If it was nothing but muktza bein hashmashas, you have a problem of opening and closing that garbage. A freezer drawer is mutter to open and close because this is the way it's used and it's a tiltum and atzad when there's no other eitzah. A wallet in a drawer should make a problem if the clothes are not being worn. A miscellaneous drawer is basically more heta than issa. A jacket or pants pocket, you could shake out the muktza and use the jacket. A shirt pocket the shirt is part of the buses is a problem. It's muktza even once you shook out the muktza. A little value does not make a buses, as we saw. Stroller, wheelchair, or walker should be emptied of any muktza that's not needed on Shabbos. Of course, it's on Shabbos and it's a heta, you could do it. A plate of shells, you could either put on heta before or afterwards. A weekday talis, zekel, can be moved freely. Tefillin on stender can be moved because it's not bailam and or it's a machtei le'issur. Cover of a light, plug or phone is not a bosis, and a car and a watch is not a bosis to the gas or battery. It's a keli for itself.